Well, I guess I should share my thoughts about the new slate of Stranger Things eps that have run that were posted on Christmas Day. Um, Episodes 5, 6, and 7, with the finale coming on New Year's Eve. I think it's going to be some limited theatrical release as well. I was hesitant to weigh in about this, but I started talking about the Will Vecna stuff and all of the implications therein. I did a video about that, and then I wrote a Substack article about it, which in which I tie that whole thing in with Pedogate. So I kind of I guess I should continue commenting. I'm one of the things though that I think this is going to be just me just kind of all over the place. I don't particularly have. Well, it's not like it's not like my videos are usually just extremely directionful, right? You don't come here to hear me. If you come here at all, you don't come here to hear me not go off on tangents a lot, or else you wouldn't come here at all. But anyway, I'm aware there's a lot of fan upheaval. There's a lot of fans who are disappointed with this final season. And there's a lot of complaints out there about this, that, and the other thing. And there might be some merit to what the fans are saying. What to me, a lot of it comes across as reactive. And it's so easy to be reactive in the age in which we live. And so I kind of like to be a little more deliberative, and deliberation just doesn't come as easy these days because everything is immediate. We just saw it an hour ago. What do we think? Oh God, I can't stand this, that, the other thing. Now, having said that, I am by no means, by no stretch, any kind of PR kind of person for the Duffer Brothers or for the show. And my feelings about the show are ambiguous. I hesitate to call myself a fan, even though the truth is I've watched all of it. I've lapped it up, every bit of it, every season, from its beginning up till now. So I guess I can't really honestly say that I'm not in some sense a fan. But that said, I don't know if it's something I would swear by as art, quote unquote, or if it's just something that I, for whatever reason, find captivating. I think I would say season 1 was art. Season 1 was they had something special there. Everything after season 1, I don't know how I would weigh in on the question of quality. I know people have had all kinds of differing opinions. Some have said this season was good, that season sucked. This character was good, that this character sucked. The reactions have been all over the map. So I don't want to, that's one of the reasons why I was hesitant to record this video, because I don't want to just be reactive, But on the other hand, this was something I opened up this this can of beer, metaphorically speaking, and I need to finish it. so I need to comment, just comment, give my thoughts, give my feedback to anyone out there who's interested on how the season is continuing, and I'll probably do something after I see the finale too. So I want to start. Let's start with the big old elephant in the room, which is the thing we all knew was coming, the Will Byers coming out scene. I'm going to probably get some hate for this, but I didn't. Okay, first of all, I don't like that they had to do the representation thing, that the Duffer Brothers had to, say, okay, yeah, we're gonna make some of our characters gay just for representation's sake. I think that's bogus, and I'm not a fan of it at all. There was actually some possibility with Will's whole character arc that they could have associated his homosexuality with his childhood trauma, being raped by Vecna. But of course they're not going to go there, are they? Of course they're not going to go there. But on the other hand, how can you watch the show and see, what was obviously a metaphorical, if not physical rape, and how can you see Vecna come up to this in his monstrous form, walk up to Will and tell him, "You broke so easily, Will, and you convinced me that children are the ones to use." How can you see any of that and not grasp the subtext there? You have to be really obtuse not to see it, but because of the pieties of our age, because you can't say that you can't do anything that would allege that homosexuality is a trauma that comes out of early childhood abuse, you can't say that. The show's not going to go there. It's not going to go there explicitly, but I think you can't help but to have that be something that is implicit. And it's not refuted. Will in his big coming out scene doesn't say, this has nothing to do with what happened between me and Vecna. This is just how I've always been. So I don't know. Now, the scene itself, as I said, I hate that it's there. I hate that the agenda is there. I hate that they had to make the LGBT representation thing be a part of the show. But all of that aside, I actually thought the scene was, and again, come at me, bro. Say that I've gone soft, or maybe some of you think that I've always been soft. Probably. I thought the scene was pretty well done. There was no, when Will got everybody together and told them his big secret, and that the reason for him telling them was kind of specious. It was sort of like, well, Vecna told me that he's going to use everything that he knows about me against me, so I just have to be honest with everybody so that they all know, so that all of you know, and so this can't possibly be used against me. I mean, I don't know, whatever. They had to have some deus ex machina to necessitate this scene. But as far as the scene itself, Uh, I think there's something about the actors, the young actors on the show, particularly the four boys, you know, and also Millie Bobby Brown. I think there's something about what they have always brought to the show, which is a sense of innocence. And even though they're all way older than they've all aged out of their their parts now, which is what a lot of people have commented on, including me. You know, there's still that underlying innocence and sweetness to these characters, and there was something about Will's whole delivery of this scene where, you know, I'm just like you guys in every single way. You know, we all love science fiction movies, and you know, we like you know, this whatever kind of candy, and you know, and we laugh at Steve Martin jokes, and you know, all this 80s topical stuff. But and you know, we're just like each other, except the only thing that's different is that, you know, I don't like girls. So he doesn't actually say I'm gay. He just says I don't like girls, and it's left. The rest of it is implicit, and I think, you know, it wasn't a plea. He wasn't saying you have to accept me, and you have to accept that my lifestyle choices are valid, and you know, when decades from now they decide that you can marry another man if you're a man, or marry another woman if you're a woman, you have to agree with all of that, or else you're a bad person. You know, it was just much more just like, look, this is who I am, and you know, I'm being honest here, and the vulnerability of the moment was very powerful. And to see you know, first his brother give him a big hug, and then his mom, or maybe it was his mom first, and then all of his friends give him a big hug and say, we're not going to abandon you, man. We'll never abandon you. You know, that wasn't, I found that, you know, for a show that was obviously communicating an agenda, the agenda was just sort of like, you know, of course, if this guy is your friend, you don't abandon him for that. Of course, if this guy is your son, if this kid is your son who you love, you don't abandon him for that. Of course you don't. I mean, that's something I think most of us, you know, however we may feel about homosexuality, I think that's something most of us would resonate with, you know, accepting the people that I'm going to get hate from, who are going to say, who are just going to say that I've gone soft, and maybe I have. I mean, I don't know, but I didn't like that the scene was there. I don't like that that's a part of the show, to the extent that it, you know, I mean, the fact that it really has nothing to do with what's going on in the show, except for the forbidden possible subplot involving Vecna and his, you know, abuse of Will when Will was a little boy, which is something, again, we're not allowed to say, or we're not allowed to consider as being possibly why he became the way he became. But again, for as far as scenes like that go, I thought it was painless and even somewhat moving. So call me a pussy. Do it. I'll take my lumps. A lot of people, again, the fan complaints seem to be centered around how the way they talk to each other and the metaphors that they use, and I don't really have much to say about that at this point, because it's still, I don't know, watching these, it's still kind of all percolating with me. So, but I will say that a couple of the scenes in episode 6, I think it was episode 6, were powerful, as far as relationship scenes, as far as you know, I don't like this the show being a soap opera, but you know, every story, you know, including action adventure, including mystery stories, including horror stories, science fiction stories, there's always something about how people relate to each other. So there's an element of drama to everything. I thought that when Steve Harrington and you know, what's this, Dustin, when they had their knockdown drag out battle, and we saw the emotion come out in both of them, you know, it was well done. And again, you know, it caught me. It grabbed my heart a little bit, without seeming manipulative, you know, because y'all know I've made it very clear that I hate when they just try to grab at your tear ducts. Now I'm still sort of digesting the scene between Jonathan and Nancy, where he, instead of proposing to her, he unproposes. It's a complex scene. It's like a scene in which they're acknowledging they're acknowledging their relationship, and that it was based on a trauma bond, a shared trauma, which I don't remember their shared trauma. You know, there are things from earlier seasons that I don't remember, and I don't recall right now what their shared trauma was. But it was a scene where they professed their love for one another, but and you know, and that they were still in love, and they would always love each other, but that they didn't belong together. So it's kind of a complex scene, but some, again, I thought the acting was good. I thought there was some real emotion that was brought out there, and I was glad that they finally gave Jonathan something to do. In fact, that whole episode, you know, we see more of Jonathan sort of being somebody who has things to say, somebody who you know, isn't just in the background. It seems like for a while he has been just a character that they put on the back burner. And you know, to be frank, in season 1, he was my guy. You know, Jonathan Byers was my guy, because he was like the loner, the outcast, unpopular. You know, had a thing for the pretty popular girl, that initially wasn't reciprocated, or wasn't apparently reciprocated. So I you know, and then recently there has been this whole anti-Jonathan campaign where people say, oh no, actually he was a peeping Tom, he was a pervert. Look, there's this whole thing with people say, and I don't know what's real or what isn't. They say, if you go back and watch season 1, you know, there's a scene where he takes a picture of Nancy at her window, you know, while she's just wearing her bra, or where she's undressing or something like that. Which, and they say that scene is now missing, but other people have gone back and say, no, It's all still there. But anyway, like, even if it happened, you know, it was not a good thing to do. It was not a proper thing to do. It doesn't, to my mind, it doesn't put Jonathan beyond the pale, right? It's something that a teenage boy in that situation might do. And like, just like in Back to the Future, you know, when Marty McFly goes back in time and sees his father George get up in a tree with binoculars and watch him. He watches his mom, or his future mom, in the window undressing, and he says, "My dad's a peeping Tom." And in 1985, when this movie came out, it was just sort of like, all right, yeah, just what a teenage boy might do. Not a good thing, not a mature thing. But now there's such an overabundance. We've overcorrected in some ways, and I'm going to probably catch hell for this too. But we've overcorrected about things like that, where, you know, in the 80s there'd be these, you know, teen sex comedies, you know, like there's the scene in Revenge of the Nerds where I even hate to talk about it makes me feel embarrassed even to talk about this scene, but where the one of the nerds puts on a mask, pretends to be the girl's boyfriend, and then they go back and have sex, and, you know, it's the cheerleader, the pretty cheerleader girl that he has a crush on, and he refuses to take off the mask, and then afterwards the sex is so good that he reveals himself to be himself, and she says, "Oh wow, you were so great," and so then she you know, finally leaves her douchebag boyfriend and to be with this nerd. That scene would never fly today, right? And it is morally dicey, but, you know, there's somewhere in the middle between where people were with that scene in 1984 and where people are with that scene in 2025. There's like a golden mean, right? And I think we've overcorrected. I mean, and that's obviously more of a violation than you know, just taking a picture of a girl in a window, but in both cases, you know, there was this effort to, like, say Jonathan was just an irredeemable perv because he did this, whether it's still there or not, whether that scene was cut by the Duffer Brothers and now it's not there anymore, or as some people claim, it's still there, and I guess I could go back and watch it if I cared enough. But yeah, so all that is to say, I'm glad they gave Jonathan something to do again, and the scene with him and Nancy, of course, I liked, you know, seeing the outcast get the girl, you know, of course I liked that. And in the first season, Steve Harrington was a jerk, and then they sort of redeemed him or made him more likable in season 2. I think he was supposed to die off, but he was a fan favorite, so they kept him on. Anyway, I thought that was a well done scene as well. We love each other, but we don't belong together, and, you know, we'll always have this bond, but it's probably for the best that we don't try to make this permanent. That, you know, that I don't propose to you, and that we don't get married, and It's a complicated scene, but it was pulled off well. People have complained about plot armor, about characters having plot armor, and how nobody's been killed off. None of the major characters have been killed off, and even Max, who we thought was dead, was actually just now, was just pulled into Vecna's world, into Vecna's mind, and now she's back. Now in this, in episode 7, I guess, she officially comes back and re-inhabits her body again and is alive again. And some people don't like that. They don't like how none of these main characters have died. And I don't know. Like that's the thing about all. Like that's something you could almost say about every action adventure movie. If it were to be more plausible, you would kill off all these characters that you have grown to love and so forth. But of course, you don't. If that were to happen, if the Duffers, who knows what they'll do in the final episode? Maybe they'll just be a massacre. Maybe everybody will be dead except for a couple. Like Hamlet did or like Shakespeare did in Hamlet. Maybe that'll happen. But so far that hasn't happened, and people have complained about that. I don't so much have a problem with that. I understand how, like, there are too many characters, and like the show has become overly contrived, and I think there's some truth to that. But again, I don't want to just be reactive. I just saw these episodes a couple days ago, so I'm really less interested. For whatever reason, I'm less interested in just evaluating this show on alleged artistic merit or not. Like it or not, it's this phenomenon. Stranger Things is maybe the last of its kind. It's the last franchise that brings everybody together, where it doesn't really matter who you voted for. It doesn't really matter where you stand on, social issues. Yeah, again, the LGBT representation stuff aside, which I think, again, the Duffers pulled off with Will's coming out scene in a manner that was really least likely to alienate anybody except, just the really hardened type of people who would say, no, if you find out your son's a fag, get rid, no, have nothing more to do with him. If you find out your friend is gay, just kick him out of your life. Which, I mean, I'm not afraid of being called an extremist, but that's not me. I wouldn't do that, in those kinds of situations. So yeah. So generally speaking, I think Stranger Things as a phenomenon might be one of the last, if not the last, franchise where it's something that all kinds of people enjoy together, which was, when we were united more as a country, and I'm old enough to remember the 70s and the 80s, when there was more, when it wasn't just the hugest deal if somebody you knew voted differently than you or felt differently on some political issue. That wasn't just a a matter of life and death, where you could just live with where we could live with our differences more, and still watch Star Wars or E.T. or Raiders or the World Series, or I don't know, whatever else, before things got as fragmented as they have gotten. Stranger Things might be the very last, like the dying gasp of that America. So I find that I'm more interested in it, in looking at it in that sort of way. And from the very beginning, the show just very cannily took these elements from, it's not just a fluke that it was set in the 80s, and it's not just for member berries or for nostalgia baiting. It was setting itself in a time that people, both that rightly or wrongly, everybody is nostalgic for, including people who are too young to remember, including people like my kids, who are too young to remember the time when nobody had cell phones, and there was no internet, and all those kinds of things. So it's been very, with the font, the opening segment with the electronic music, the 80s electronic music, and the font, and the presentation of the title, which I like the original. They've done a little bit more fancy stuff with now because they have a huger budget. But I just remember when I was watching season 1, it's like, wow, this is like, chapter 1. I didn't read Stephen King novels, but I know Stephen King novels were huge in the 80s, and it didn't really matter. You could be a Democrat or a Republican and still read Stephen King, and a lot of people did. I wasn't that into him myself, but I recognize it. I recognize Stephen King and Steven Spielberg both, which the show, brings up these artists, these creators, these influencers on popular culture, and again, in the 80s, rightly or wrongly, you didn't think about Steven Spielberg and think, oh, he's just a Hollywood pedophile, Jew, liberal, or on the other hand, defend him for being a pedophile, Jew, liberal. You just thought he makes these awesome movies, and with Stephen King, for the people who read him, it was just like, yeah, man, his books are so cool, and like, they're so intense, and whatever it was that people got out of them. I don't know. The movie is consciously hearkening back to that aesthetic. Even the casting of Winona Ryder, who's now, someone around my age, and at the time was a teenage vixen, teenage star. It's all done, and it's all done, I think, in a way that is really interesting, and that there's an artistry to that. And that's what really interests me about it. I'm more interested in Stranger Things as a phenomenon than I am in trying to evaluate it as art per se. Although I will say, I think season 1 was art, and after season 1, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about its overall artistic quality, but I know it's been whatever it is, it's been compelling enough to keep me watching, and to keep a lot of other people watching. And it doesn't seem to matter whether you're a liberal or a Republican, a liberal or a conservative, or whether you voted for Trump or didn't vote for Trump, or it doesn't seem to matter. And it might be the last thing, like the last franchise like that. This is the dying gasp of what used to be a more united culture. And as that, there's something really poignant about it, and there's something really powerful about it. And I didn't even know I was going to talk about this, but it came up for me. Now, this video's already gotten longer than I thought, so I'm going to end this here. There might be a couple of other things I'd like to add, but I'm interested in hearing anybody's feedback, including those of you who just want to hate on me for being such a pussy, for not being just angry as hell about the Will Byers coming out scene, or not being as angry as you think I should be. Whatever. Just leave your comments below, whoever you are, if you care to. And thanks for